a compromise. And so these people allow negative thinking. They allow people suggesting to them that everything is wrong. They fear to move forward, not stopping and asking themselves, okay, all the tools that God has given me in my toolbox, how many of them am I using? You see, you keep asking God for more and more and more, and God may be saying to you, hey, look in your toolbox. I've equipped you with everything you need to do what you want to do. Your fundamental problem is that you don't look in your toolbox. You're constantly looking for something new. And sometimes all we got to do is look in the toolbox, and in the toolbox we have the equipment to deal with the changes that are happening. Because change is going to happen if you're prepared or not. If you're prepared to embrace it or not, change is going to happen. And what happens is that God wants you and me to look in our toolbox. Because when we look inside that toolbox, what can happen? It could reshape our attitude. So when you look at that toolbox, you say, oh, God gave me this 15 years ago. This change happened, I can use this. You're going to have an attitude disposition change. Because you've gone inside your toolbox, and what God has given you, you are equipped to deal with the change. So what happens? Your attitude changes. It's not that I don't have enough anymore. It's I went inside the toolbox, and God has already prepared me for it. See, God is not going to lead you somewhere that he hasn't prepared you for. And what happens is that when you look inside that toolbox, you're going to have a mindset change. Yes. When you go inside that toolbox and you look at all the tools inside that toolbox, you're going to ask yourself, why am I not using the tools in the toolbox? You have a mindset change. And what happens is that when you have this new disposition, you have that mindset change, what you start to do now, you start to think young. Don't ever stop thinking young. You know, you may not physically be able to do all the things that you did at 25. But even at 55, at 60, do you realize that Caleb and Joshua were almost 90 years old? Do you really, when you read this, do you understand that they were not 25 and 35-year-olds? But they had the mindset of a 25-year-old. They had the thinking of a 25-year-old. They didn't let all that doubt and that uncertainty cause them not to move forward. I want you to turn the numbers because I want you to see the story. See, I can sit up here and tell it to you. And you can listen. But actually to see it yourself and read it yourself, that's going to give you the nutriments that you need. So in this generational change that happens, and it happens all the time, one generation hands off to the other. You can resist it if you want. There's a consequence for resisting it. You know what's going to happen when you resist it? You're going to get left behind. You're going to get left behind. Because it ain't going to wait for you. And it ain't going to wait for me. You're going to get left behind. Pastor, how can you say that? I want you to see it here. Now, let's go to it so I can set the scene for you. Go to Numbers 13, chapter 13, verses 1 through 3. And I want you to see how God don't play games, how God is concise and God is precise, and God looks at things differently than you and I look at it. You see, God knows all, he sees all, he understands all, he anticipates all, he deals with all. There ain't nothing in this universe that God isn't aware of. But oftentimes, he will test you and me. Don't you think God knew what was inside the territory of Canaan? Don't you think God knew the Amorites, the Jebusites, and all of these people were there? The Enochs were there, big, huge people. Didn't you think God knew they had milk and honey in there? Pomerangs. Didn't you think God knew that was like flowing streams of milk and honey? God knew all that. But oftentimes, he will see where our mindset is. He will see what we are thinking. He will see what we are willing to do. Watch this. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, watch this, send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I've given to the children of Israel. Now, when you read this, it's like, oh, this is just a spy trip. And Moses could say, look, to himself, I know the best and the brightest. I know who the Green Beret is. I know who the reconnaissance people is. Moses could say, well, I'm going to pick who I want. But that wasn't the test. Watch this. Send me men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I'm going to give to the children of Israel. Now watch, God gives us specific instructions. And ask yourself, why does God give him these specific instructions? Because God isn't a God of chance. God's going to tell you what it is. Oftentimes we're not listening. God tells them, from each tribe of their fathers, you shall send a man, every one a leader among them. So he says, look, y'all been moaning and groaning and complaining and fussing and finding fault and not using all the tools in your toolbox and just always crying out to me. And I constantly do over and over, and you never stop and say, well, God, let me have this experience I can use in this change. You know, you don't correlate anything. You don't look at things from a panoramic view. I tell you what, let me just see where your mindset is. God does the same thing with you and me. Don't you think it's peculiar that God gives us specific instructions to pick a leader from amongst each tribe? Think about that. God says, look, I want you to go to each tribe, and I want you to pick a leader from that tribe so I can get a clear perspective on how they think. Yeah. So he tells him, and so he tells Moses in verse 3. So Moses sent them to the wilderness of Paran according to the command of the Lord. Now watch this. All of them men who were heads of the children of Israel. God wanted to understand their mindset. He wanted to know how they thought. You see, oftentimes we will say one thing and do another. You're going to do what you think. You become what you think. Now, you can fake it. You ever been in a relationship the first 6 months, a year? You just think, man, this person is great. It's I don't know what. But just stay in that relationship. And they can't maintain that false disposition forever. It's going to show up. So God sort of examining these mindsets, and he don't just get anybody, he picked the leaders. Watch this. Go down to verse 17. And I want you to see the significance of mindset. I want you to see the significance of definiteness of purpose. I want you to see the significance of intestinal fortitude. I want you to see why it's important that what you do and what you say matter. We're going to see it here. Now watch this. Verse 17. Then Moses sent them to spy out in the land of Canaan and said to them, go up to the south and go up to the mountains and see what the land is like. Whether the people who dwell there are strong or weak, few or many, whether the land they dwell in is good or bad, whether the city they inhabit are like campuses or strongholds. He's given us specific instructions. Whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are forest trees or not. Now look what he tells them. While you're on this reconnaissance plan, be of what? Be of good courage. And bring up some of the fruit of the land back. And so he gives them specific instructions. So they depart and they go in. And they do their analysis and they do everything that Moses asked them to do. But I want you to see the impact of generational changes. I want you to see the impact of mindset. And I want you to see that change is going to happen. And if you don't adapt to that change, you're going to be left behind. Now watch this. So they does what Moses tell them to do. They come back safe. Now go to verse 27, chapter 13, verse 27. And I want you to see why, look, it's very significant who you hang around. It's very significant who you deal with. Because the people you hang around and the people you deal with, 9 out of 10 times, going to have some impact on your decision-making process. Now, you may think they don't, but they will. You always hear me talk about my dad because you see, the reason why you hear me talk about my dad, because I rejected everything this man told me. Because I thought his ways were old and obsolete. But as I got old, I started to see, well, Sonny used to say, son, birds of a feather flock together. Show me your company, I'll tell you your kind. Association brings on assimilation. I said, why this dude telling me this, bro? He just tells me this all the time. What's wrong with you, bro? I'm saying this in my head now. I wouldn't dare say that out loud. What's wrong with this dude? And I couldn't understand why he was telling me that. And he was telling me, son, your company matters. The people you want to hang around, the people you want to associate, they're going to influence your decisions. You have no choice. They're going to impact you. Look at verse 38. 27, I'm sorry. Then they told him and said, we went to the land where you sent us. And truly it flows with milk and honey. And this is fruit there too. Now watch this. Always watch. If you want to tell when somebody about to hit you with something you don't want to hear, watch their words. And watch this word, but or nevertheless. Oh, they're going to tell you, no, but here it comes. So God has prepared you for that. Watch this. Now, after they told Moses, they gave him a report saying, look, man, they got milk and honey. They got lands flowing with pomegranates, big grapes. They got all this stuff. But the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites dwell in the mountain, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea, along the banks of the Jordan. Moses already knew that. Their mindset is, I want it, but it's difficult to get. I want it, but it's difficult to get. If it was easy to get, everybody would get it. Think about that. But watch this. Verse 30. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. Watch the different mindset. Now remember, 12 of them went in there, of the best and the brightest of the tribe. The best in the 10 of them come back with this, oh man, look, this is just, we just can't deal with this. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be a slaughter. We're going to get destroyed. All of our children, our wives, everybody, they're going to just defile us. But Caleb, with intestinal fortitude like Daniel, faith, and definiteness of purpose, says time out. Time out. Wait a minute. If God be with us, who can be against us? He reminds them. And see, young people have a tendency to remind you of things you've forgotten. Yes. It's something that God has given the youth that keeps them even with setbacks. They can have setback until we jade their thinking. They can have setback after setback and they'll go again until we corrupt their thinking. So what Caleb does, he says, look, Y'all need to be open-minded. Y'all need to have intestinal fortitude. Y'all need to have definiteness of purpose. But watch this. Remember, 10 gives a negative report. Only Joshua and Caleb gives a positive report. Look at chapter, we're going to go to 14 now. After this negative report, remember I tell you what people say matters? What people do matters. People have an impact on you. Don't think they don't. Because what happens is that we're always looking for somebody. You know what get me all the time? When somebody tell me, they said. My first question is, who is they? Who is they? Who's telling you this? What's the genesis of this? Because what happens is that you're relating me something they said. I don't know who they are, so I don't know what their mindset is. I don't know what their beliefs are. I don't know what they understand. So you try to get me into your space. Man, I don't want to be in your space. I want to be in the space that God has given me. So if you can't find who they are, leave me alone. Watch this. After Caleb tells them, look, man, y'all got to have definiteness of purpose. Y'all got to have faith. Y'all got to have intestinal fortitude. Man, we're going to overcome. God has promised us this. Look what happens in chapter 14. Not one. I want you to see this. You see, when you stand for right, when you stand for God, and when you stand with definiteness of purpose for where God is sending you, don't be surprised if you turn around and you don't see nobody. Have you ever been in a situation where my ride and die for life partner, you know that stuff y'all say. See, I don't even listen to that kind of foolishness. Or my y'all my best BFL, best friend for life. And my best friend for life. And when I tell you something you don't want to hear, I don't want to talk to them no more. BFF, best friend for life. A ride and die partner. Those, how many best friends have you had for life? How many ride or die partners you have? I remember the boy name was Lewis Brown and I shouldn't have been doing this. I don't even know. I should tell a story. I ain't gonna tell a story. we in the Pittsburgh Steelers playing for the Sugar Bowl. We should have been there. We down in the French Quarter. Shouldn't have been there. Anyway, don't leave that one alone. Anyway, but I'll tell you, my ride or die partner left me in the car by myself to die. My ride or die partner. So watch this. So all of the congregation lifted up their voices and cried out, and the people wept. Now watch this all night. Just imagine this. Just pay attention. Look. I just love the way God just put this. You got to see it, so you cannot miss it. When you read God's word and you study, you cannot miss it. It's just so obvious. God makes it so plain and clear. That's incredible. Watch this. And all the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt, or only we had died in the wilderness. That's how frightened they are. Frightened of what? God promised it, and God never breaks his promise, so what do you got to be afraid of? Why has the Lord brought us? It's hilarious. You know, it's so funny, it's hilarious. I was listening to Saturday Night Live, and matter of fact, Deacon Charles goes, hey man, turn on Saturday Night Live. Whenever you see something on TV you thought might be interesting, turn on Chappelle gonna be on Saturday Night Live. So I turned it on, man. And Chappelle, I mean, he's hilarious. You got to just watch it. It's on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and stuff. And he says something that, that I thought was just so hilarious. He said he knew Donald Trump was going to win the election. He said, you know how I knew Donald Trump was going to win the election? He said, because Donald Trump touched a vein in the people. And I just thought it was so hilarious and it was so factual in nature. He said, Donald Trump came from out of the big house and walked outside and told the people, you know everything that you've been thinking been going on in there? All these years? What you believe about taxes, what you believe about law, what you believe about this, what you believe about government, everything you ever believe, I want to tell you it is going on inside of there. Boy, I bust out laughing. Like, and you know, when you think about it, and then he said, Trump says, look, I'm going to tell you what's going on, and then I'm going to go back in that house and tell you how to do the same thing. And he said, that's how he knew Donald Trump was going to win. Anyway. So they ask here, notice their words. If you've only let us die in Egypt, watch that mindset. Why has the Lord brought us out of this land by the sword? Now, I want you to remember, I told you my dad says, association, show me your company, I'll tell you your kind. Birds of a feather flock together. Association brings on assimilation. Remember I told you that Jesus said, what you say, you're going to be judged by it. Remember that. Now watch this. It says, why has the Lord brought us out of this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and children should become victims? Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? You see, you want to go back to where you used to be because you're comfortable. Your traditions tell you that's going to be okay. And they said to one another, let us select a leader and return to Egypt. See, your words have impact. Your words have impact. Your words affect other people. Your words will determine whether or not a person at a crossroad oftentimes will look backwards or forward based on what you tell them. And so God is showing us here that words matter. And he's showing us that the same, he's going to show you here, the same words that you use to describe your fear, the same words you use to underline Moses, all the stuff that you spoke that into being. And God is looking at that generation, and that generation is not prepared for change. That generation is not prepared for opportunity. That generation is closed-minded. That generation finds fault with everything. That generation just want to stay where it's at. Change is happening, and God says to them, okay, you don't want to embrace change? You don't want to look at things differently? You don't want to have an open mind? Then you know what? I'm going to let all y'all just die out. And all of you guys that left out of Egypt, with all of this prosperity, remember they left out of Egypt with a lot of prosperity. They left out of Egypt with a lot of hope. They plummeted the Egyptians. They took all of the treasure and the grain and everything. I mean, they came out with abundance. And they moaned and they groaned and they complained and they just wanted to stay where they are, and they got caught in traditions. Think about that. They're saying to Moses, look, God let us leave out of bondage, but we prefer to be back in Egypt under bondage. And that's what Satan wants you to do. Satan wants you to go back to where you used to be. He don't want to, embrace the change. He don't want you to embrace the new technologies. He don't want you to take full advantage of everything that God has made possible for you. Watch this. Verse number 6. Verse number 8, 14:8. And the Lord delights in us, this is Joshua talking, that he will bring us unto the land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our what? Bread. Their protection has departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. Caleb says, hey, look, Down in this toolbox, God has already given me everything I need. All I got to do is open the toolbox and look in it. Oh, this happened on such and such a day. I can use this. This happened on such and such a day. I can use that. This happened. God has equipped me and prepared me to go and deal with this. So therefore, I'm going to have faith. I'm going to trust in the Lord. I'm going to have intestinal fortitude. When everybody else is going one way, it's all right for me to go another way. He's saying I'm going to have definiteness of purpose. God said it, and I believe it. It's going to drive my purpose. He's telling you and I am going to move forward. Now, I want you to stop here and pay close attention. Look at 14 and 10. After Joshua says all this, look what they say. And all the congregation said, stone them with stones. They were so stuck on staying where they were, not just staying where they were, but going backwards. You see, when you don't embrace change, when you don't embrace the possibility, when you don't understand that things are going to constantly change, and if you don't evolve, if you don't transcend, if you don't transcend the present, you're going to be left behind. And how many times have people woken up in their lives and say, man, what happened? What happened? You didn't embrace the change. You wanted the things to go back the way they used to be. Things only happen once, and they never happened that way again. That comes from the Chronicles of Narnia. They only happen one time in life, and they never happened that way again. And what God is saying to you and I, that embrace change and embrace this generational change, because if you don't, there's going to be a consequence. Look at verse 20. When we come into a close. Now Moses goes through this dissertation before I get there, and he thinks he's being coy with God, and you can read in detail when you get home. And he sort of bargains with God to say, look, God, if you do what you're thinking about doing, then everybody's going to say that you're a God that promised these people something, and because you couldn't deliver it, you just wiped them all out. So if you look at Moses sort of bargains with God. We skip that because I don't have time to walk through it all day. But so God says, all right, Moses, you're my boy. You have faith every now and then. So I'm going to grant you this dispensation. Moses' faith waned often too now. Watch this. Verse 20. Then the Lord said, I have pardoned according to your word. So he said, okay, Moses, I'm granting you this dispensation. You think you convinced me, Moses, but I already had this plan. I just allowed you to go through your machinations. I allowed you to go through this eloquent dissertation on why I shouldn't do what I'm going to do. But I had a plan in the beginning. So, okay, I'm going to give you this pardon. Now, I want you to say why words matter. I want you to see why actions matter. And if you don't leave with anything today, realize that your words count. What you say matters. It has a dramatic impact on people. Watch this. Verse 22. Because all these men have seen my glory and the signs which I did in Egypt in the wilderness, and have put me to the test now 10 times, and have not heeded my voice, they certainly should not see the land which I swore to their fathers, nor should any of them who rejected me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he is different in spirit, see spirit, that mindset. Caleb and Joshua is different in spirit. They have faith, they have intestinal fortitude, they have definiteness of purpose because they believe in God and they know God has equipped them in their toolbox with everything that they need. So God says, because their spirit is different, My servant Caleb I will bring into the land where he went, and his descendants shall inherit it. Now watch this. Skip down to 26. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, you see all that stuff they said? You see all that stuff they spoke into being? You see all the corruption they did? You see all the rebellion they did? You see how they sort of gave all these negative things to people? Everything they said and did, you know what? It's going to happen to them. I have heard the complaints, verse 27, which the children of Israel make against me. Say to them, as I live, says the Lord, just as you have spoken in my hearing, so I will do to you. The carcasses of you who have complained against me shall fall in the wilderness, and all of you who are numbered according to your entire number, from 20 years old and above, except for Caleb and Joshua the son of Nun, shall by no means enter the land which I swore I will make you dwell in. But watch this. But the little ones, the youth, those who think differently, those whose time is coming, who has come, but the little ones who you said would be the victims, I will bring in, and they shall know the land which you have despised. Listen to me carefully. If you don't accept the change, don't be surprised if you're left behind. Don't be surprised if you're left behind. And don't be surprised if God says, because you are infidel, because you're stubborn in your ways, because you have closed your mind, because you're not open to the possibility, because you lack faith, because you lack intestinal fortitude, because you lack definiteness of purpose, I'm going to leave you where you are. And instead of being a few days, it's going to take you 4 generations to get where you're trying to get, and you ain't going to get there. The very ones that you tried to hinder, the very ones that you tried to cripple, those are the ones I'm going to use. Those are the ones I'm going to open up the doors to. And he says to you and I, stop nullifying my words by your tradition. You'll see that in Luke 7 and 13. Stop nullifying my promises by your words. Stop undermining my promises by your words. Embrace change. And God says to you and I, there's always going to be a generational change. There's always going to be new leaders I'm going to lift up. Get out of their way. Be like Joshua and Caleb. Be a mentor. Be a teacher. Be someone that they can turn to when they need advice. But don't hinder their thinking. Don't hinder their open-mindedness. Don't hinder all of the capacity I've given them because you want them to fit inside of a box that even you couldn't fit in. So when these kids want to get outside, you know what these kids say to you and me? I was telling someone this the other day. They're saying to you and me, all of the trials and tribulations that my grandparents went through and great-grandparents went through, the lack of opportunity, the closed doors, and all of the doors they opened for you. Think about this. All of the doors they opened for you. All of the possibilities they opened for you. What did you do with them? How did you use the tools in your toolbox? What did you do with the tools in your toolbox? And they're saying to you and me, why in the world should I listen to you? Because you did not use all the tools in your toolbox. You didn't use all the advantages that were given to you. So why would you try to cram me in a box that you didn't want to be in when you didn't take full advantage? They're telling you and I, I'm not going to think out of the box. They're saying to you and I, I'm going to get out of the box. Because this little cubby hole you're trying to put me in, it didn't work for you. Yeah. Think about it. They're saying it didn't work for you. You didn't embrace the generational changes. You didn't embrace all the opportunities. You didn't go through the windows that God opened for you. So why in the world would I condition myself to your traditions and the things you did? And that's why it's important for you and I to note these generational changes and note the results when you don't embrace them. When you don't embrace them, you get stuck in the journey and you wake up and you ask yourself, what happened to me? Do you receive that message? Let us all stand. There's power in God's word. Let's prepare ourselves to give, not grudgingly or not of necessity, because God loves a cheerful giver, and he's able to make grace in all things happen abundantly. We want to thank you for being with us today. If this message has been a blessing to you and your family, we encourage you to make a donation to keep this broadcast on the air. You can make your donations by going to BethesdaApostolichouseofprayer.com on our secure website, or Givelify app, where you can make your donation to keep this broadcast on the air. Please remember, your tithes go to your local church, but your offerings can go to where you're being fed. And as we continue on our journey, remember this. 2 Corinthians 5:7 tells us that we walk by faith, not by sight.